What did you do to me? You're the worst. I was invited by a beautiful CEO who loves mountaineering, named Sarah, to head to the snowy mountains. What was thought to be a fun climb turned into a nightmare when we were suddenly struck by a fierce blizzard and got stranded. I saved the freezing beautiful CEO, Miller, but as soon as she regained consciousness, she misunderstood and thought I had done something terrible and started crying hysterically. We made it home safely, but she still misunderstood me. A few days later, I was called into Miller's office, where an unexpected twist awaited me. My name is John Anderson. This year, I turned 35. Having joined a major company right out of college, I thought I'd work there for the rest of my life. But then, I heard that Elizabeth Miller was starting her own business. She was in desperate need of talented people and reached out to me. I wasn't sure if I was one of those talented people, but I always maintained a high performance and was frequently asked for advice by my colleagues. Miller wanted me to work for her, so I must have been doing something right. However, when Miller approached me with the offer, I was honestly hesitant. Leaving a major company to work for a new startup seemed like a big risk. Even after hearing her out, I couldn't make up my mind. I had been working at the major company for 13 years, and I had built a decent career. Do I have the courage to throw it all away? As I pondered, I remembered an old dream of mine. I had always dreamed of starting my own company. But after getting a job at a major company and seeing my career take off, I kept putting that dream aside for various reasons. I used to be more willing to take risks back in the day. Thinking back to my college days, I started to consider that maybe working for Miller's company wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. So, what about the offer to work for us? Yay, I've decided to take the offer. Really? Thank you. When I told Miller I was leaving my company to work at hers, she was thrilled. Miller had always been on the quieter side, not talking much to others, but it seems her vibe completely changed after becoming a professional. Switching from glasses to contacts and starting to wear makeup probably played a big part. I bet 99 out of 100 people would call Miller beautiful. Knowing her from our college days, I feel a tremendous gap between then and now. Moreover, Miller is incredibly talented and is known within the company as the beautiful CEO. Working under Miller made me want to push myself harder than ever. Since the industry was different from where I previously worked, I initially didn't know what I was supposed to do. I had to start from the basics, which meant asking a lot of questions, often to those younger than me. I was anxious about fitting in at the workplace, but the talent Elizabeth brought in was nothing short of excellent. Their explanations were clear, allowing me to quickly get accustomed to my duties. Around a year after I started working at Miller's company, I was invited to go mountaineering. It turns out Miller had taken up mountaineering as a hobby for some time, using it as a way to clear her head. She usually went alone, but remembering that I was in the mountaineering club during college, she invited me. Hey, Anderson, weren't you in the mountaineering club back in college? How about joining me on my next day off? Mountaineering, huh? It's been a while, but since you asked, I'd love to join. Initially, the plan was to go with a few others, but they had to cancel last minute due to childcare responsibilities. In the end, it was just Miller and me left, so we decided to go ahead with the plan. Having kids really makes it hard to stick to plans, huh? We're free because we're single, but it's a different story once you have kids. While having this conversation, we climbed a mountain. Miller wanted to do some serious mountaineering, so she chose a mountain that was more suited for advanced climbers. Moreover, being winter, we needed to prepare for the cold, and the snow made the footing treacherous. Both Miller and I were well equipped, but we gradually began to run out of breath. For me, it had been a while since I did serious mountaineering, and it seemed to be Miller's first time tackling a snowy mountain. We decided to aim for a rest stop first, using oxygen spray as needed. I thought I was pretty accustomed to mountaineering, but snow mountains are really something else. When I first challenged a snowy mountain, I was surprised too. You doing okay, Miller? If it's too much, we can call it quits. No way, I'm not letting this beat me. Miller turned out to be more resilient than I expected, insisting on reaching the summit. Then, I'll stick with you to the end. Reaching the summit of this mountain might change something inside me. With that thought, the two of us helped each other as we aimed for the summit. We were making good progress up to the mid-slope, but the weather gradually started to look ominous. It might turn into a blizzard if we continued like this. We had to hurry to the shelter, or in the worst case, we might get stranded. We may get caught in a blizzard, so let's hurry. I encouraged Miller, who was tired, to push a little harder. However, our efforts were in vain as we were hit by a fierce blizzard while aiming for the shelter. Miller, are you okay? I can't see much, but somehow. Miller was trying her best, but it seemed like she was nearing her limit due to the cold. Somehow recalling the map in my head, I tied Miller and myself together with a rope to proceed. Tying us together with a rope meant we wouldn't get separated. After walking for a while, we finally saw the sign for the shelter appear before us. We finally made it. Let's get inside quickly. Yeah. Once inside the shelter, we immediately turned on the heating. The heating worked without a problem, but the draft was terrible. No matter how much we tried to warm up by the heater, the draft made us shiver. For us, already close to our limits, this situation was really bad. Moreover, Miller's inner layer was soaked with snow, chilling her to the core. I was only wet on the outer waterproof layer, so removing my jacket would somewhat help. But Miller was shivering so much that her teeth were chattering, potentially facing a life-threatening situation. Trying to raise Miller's body temperature somehow, I looked for ways to warm up the room. I might not make it. I can feel my hands. It's okay, let's just warm up and wait for the blizzard to pass. I prepared some instant noodles I had brought for emergencies and handed them to Miller. Miller managed to hold the cup and eat the noodles, but she kept dropping the fork because she couldn't feel her hands. Right after eating the noodles, she seemed to warm up, but as time passed, she returned to her previous state. We were huddling together for warmth when suddenly, Miller collapsed onto me. Hey, are you okay? Miller, come on, stay with me. It seems like Miller was getting hypothermia from her inner layers being wet with snow. Losing consciousness meant she was in a pretty dangerous state. Under normal circumstances, I shouldn't do this, but this is an emergency. I quickly took off Miller's wet clothes and wrapped her body in a blanket. Removing the wet clothes should help her body warm up a bit. I focused on warming up Miller's body, waiting for the blizzard to pass. Even though I was in the mountaineering club, I've never encountered a blizzard this severe. But if I start to lose hope now, Miller will feel anxious when she wakes up. So, I tried not to think about the worst-case scenario and instead thought about what we'd do when we got home. Let's watch that TV show when we get back, or let's go out for pizza. Just thinking about these things helped distract me a bit. Miller didn't wake up, but she was breathing slowly. I was worried about her not waking up, but she must be warming up while sleeping. She should wake up eventually. In the end, about 5 hours had passed by the time the blizzard stopped since we arrived at the shelter. It's about time she woke up, but just as I was thinking this, Miller woke up on my lap. Did I fall asleep? You passed out. I'm glad you woke up. The blizzard seems to have passed. Is that so? That's good. Miller realized she wasn't wearing her clothes, quickly got up, and moved away from me. I tried to explain the situation, but my words didn't seem to reach her in her panic. Instead, the more I tried to explain, the more it sounded like excuses to Miller. What did you do to me? You're the worst. No, there's a reason for this. What reason? Don't think you can just do this and get away with it. Unfortunately, the rescue team arrived at that moment. Right after we got to the shelter, I had sent out a request for rescue. I hoped everything would be fine once the blizzard settled, but I acted thinking about the worst-case scenario. Miller, wrapped in a blanket, rushed to the rescue team. The rescue team, not fully grasping the situation, glared at me and instructed Miller to get dressed. I had to clear up the misunderstanding quickly, so I explained the situation to one of the rescuers. They were familiar with the conditions in the snowy mountains and understood my actions. Still, Miller looked at me like I was the perpetrator, visibly frightened throughout. There's work as usual tomorrow, but I have no idea what will happen if Miller continues to misunderstand me. So, first thing after arriving at work, I must clear up Miller's misunderstanding. The next day, I headed to the office with determination, but it was already too late. Rumors about Miller and me had spread throughout the company. Did you hear? Anderson supposedly took off Miller's clothes. Especially, the looks from the female employees were painful. and being in the office became a torment. Luckily, I was out on business the whole day, but it wouldn't be the same tomorrow. Am I going to have to endure these sharp stares forever? Moreover, since that day, I've been stopped by the secretary every time I try to enter the president's office, and I get no response to my messages. After a few days of this, I was mentally exhausted. I had been producing results at work until now, but recently I've achieved nothing. Not only that, but I've made careless mistakes, and there have been complaints from clients. If this situation continues, I might not be able to stay at the company. Anyway, to ease my mind, I decided to talk to my colleague and old classmate, Michael Thompson. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I guess I've instilled fear in Miller. You didn't do anything wrong, man. I would have done the same thing if I were in Anderson's situation. Thompson was a classmate from college and was in the mountaineering club with me. So, he understood what I meant. He told me that what I discussed wasn't wrong at all and to hold my head high. It wasn't much of advice, but just being able to talk about it made me feel a lot lighter. Besides, having even one person on my side made me feel like I could overcome anything. Encouraged by Thompson, I managed to get through my work. How can you keep such a calm face? Have you ever thought about how the president feels? Despite the harsh words from other employees, I somehow managed to hold my ground. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just hadn't been given a chance to explain myself. If I couldn't defend myself, I thought it was better to keep silent rather than make a fuss. After spending a few days like this, I was suddenly called to the president's office by Miller. This was the first time I would face Miller since we returned from the mountain. She had been ignoring all my attempts to communicate, and now I wondered what she could possibly want to say. It could be something not very favorable for me. Imagining the worst, I hesitantly knocked on the president's office door. "Come in." Miller's voice, heard through the door, was cold, making it clear I wasn't welcome. Once inside, I could tell from the atmosphere that Miller was angry. "Do you understand why you've been called here? Is it about what happened on the snowy mountain? If you understand, then this will be quick. I'm asking you to resign." It was just as I had feared. I knew Miller was angry and expected some sort of punishment. But to be asked to resign, even though I had saved Miller's life, seemed too harsh. I tried to explain before, but I was trying to save your life. That's just an excuse, isn't it? How dare you strip someone's clothes off? Please, just hear me out. It's already been decided. Please make sure to hand over your work to your colleague. Miller said this and urged me to leave the office. Is it all over? Just when life was starting to get enjoyable after I threw everything away to work here. As I thought this, the door to the president's office burst open. There stood Thompson, out of breath. Wait a minute, I have something to say. Thompson went to the same university as Miller, but they shouldn't be well acquainted. Whatever Thompson could say now, it likely wouldn't change the outcome. I was about to give up and leave the office when Thompson grabbed my arm. With a look that seemed to say, "Don't give up," he appealed to me. "Please look at this." What is this? What Thompson handed to Miller was his smartphone screen. I couldn't see what was on it from where I was, but Miller was intently looking at the screen. Then, after thinking for a while, she said she needed some time to think. About a minute later, Miller stood up and came towards me. Then, making direct eye contact with her sincerity, she deeply apologized to me. "I'm sorry for misunderstanding you." "What do you mean?" "I finally understand why you did what you did on the snowy mountain." When Thompson showed me the smartphone screen, it had instructions for rescue. Wearing wet clothes, no matter how much you try to warm up, your body temperature will continue to drop. So, the best thing to do is to take off the wet clothes and wrap yourself in a blanket. So, that was the way to do it. Being in the situation myself, I hadn't thought to use external information to explain why I acted the way I did. Although internet articles can be unreliable, with so much information available, Miller had no choice but to be convinced. Thompson came running to make sure I didn't get fired. More than avoiding resignation, I was moved to tears that Thompson went out of his way to help me. We were in the same mountaineering club in college, but we weren't that close back then. So, when we joined the same company, we didn't talk much, and I didn't think we were real friends until I approached him for advice. But here he was, desperately trying to help me. I don't know why Thompson would go to such lengths to help me, but for now, I'm just grateful for his actions. Later, Miller made an announcement in the company, and the misunderstanding was cleared. Thank you for saving me back then. It really helped. The thanks is mutual. Haha, never mind it. But I didn't do anything for you. Have you forgotten about that time? With that, Thompson began to tell a story from our college days. I had just started college and didn't have anything particular I wanted to do, so I wasn't planning to join any clubs. But at that time, I was invited by a friend to join the mountaineering club. I had absolutely no interest in mountaineering, but since it was an invitation from a friend, I decided to participate just once. I was captivated by the charm of mountaineering from that single experience and decided to join. My friend didn't seem to fit in well and ended up joining another club. Despite not knowing anyone, I became friendly with the other members and enjoyed the weekly mountaineering trips. Thompson had joined a club before me, but we hung out with different members, so we didn't really interact. It seems Thompson had the same impression, and we weren't particularly close. I think we only talked during club meetings sometimes. However, Thompson mentioned that there was a time when I helped him. I have no recollection of that. When he went into details, he said it was a windy day. It wasn't a snowy mountain like this time, and since it was a low mountain, everyone went with light gear. When the wind started blowing suddenly, the club members were quite panicked. But among them, there was one person who responded calmly and led the members. That was you, Anderson. I've respected you since that day. Now that you mention it, I remember something like that. It's only after you said it that I recall. We were all beginners that day, and the members were quite panicked, I remember. I was a beginner at mountaineering too, but thanks to studying beforehand, it paid off. I had simulated various situations and thought of corresponding measures, so I could respond calmly when the strong wind blew, and I could apply first aid on this snowy mountain. I hadn't thought of it as saving someone because of my actions, but looking back, maybe I did help many people. I hadn't had much confidence in myself until now, but this made me feel a bit more confident. You don't realize his own strength. Haha. I always thought you could do great things. Great things, huh? Thompson patted my shoulder and returned to his desk. From that day, I started thinking about something. That is, I wanted to try starting a business. I'll turn 35 this year, but I feel like I can still take on challenges. But what should I start with? When something isn't sure, the best thing to do is to ask someone. I decided to talk to Miller, who was closest to me. Starting a business involves a lot of hassle, like raising funds and preparing documents related to the business. Still, I studied hard and managed to cram knowledge about starting a business into my head. By that time, I had received a promotion offer from Miller. I know you wanted to start a business, but if it's okay with you, I'd like you to continue working here. You're telling me that now. I'm sorry, but we need your help. I'm seriously considering a promotion for you. Honestly, when I was told about the promotion, my heart wavered. But the dream I had since my college days was now within reach. Should I choose stability or chase my dream? After months of deliberation, I chose to start a business. Miller looked sad, and Thompson seemed lonely as he saw me off. It was tough to leave, but this was my decision. For now, all I can do is work hard to make a profit. I introduced myself around a lot after starting my business, but it was hard to find work that led to jobs. Being on my own meant I didn't have to pay employees, but still, my money was dwindling every day. I had savings for times like this, but at this rate, they would run out. While I was wondering what to do, I got a call from Thompson. It doesn't look like I'll have to work late today, so if you have time, let's go out for a drink. I was just thinking I wanted to drink. Is meeting in front of a station okay? I know I should be saving money right now, but I couldn't help wanting to drink with someone. I quickly got ready and headed to the station we agreed to meet at. I checked the calendar earlier, and it seems it's been half a year since I resigned. I've been so busy lately that I haven't taken a proper break, losing all sense of time. Thompson, whom I hadn't seen for half a year, seemed a bit more mature and calmer than before. Long time no see. Have you been well? I found a nice place, let's go there. Despite his calm demeanor, his way of speaking hadn't changed from the old Thompson. Just seeing him after so long made me tear up. I'm not sure if Thompson noticed my eyes were red, but for some reason, he walked half a step ahead of me. The place Thompson chose was famous for its delicious steaks. Moreover, he casually mentioned he had already made a reservation. This place apparently requires a reservation to get in, so maybe he was thinking of inviting me even before he called. I was a bit curious, but I figured it's better not to ask. I took a seat guided by the server and ordered a beer, just like Thompson did. By the way, I heard Miller is getting married. Seriously. Beat me to it, huh? Thompson didn't pry into my recent troubles or point out my gloomy demeanor. We just talked about how the company was doing now and what I was getting into. That's all we talk about. He must be trying to be considerate in his own way. But knowing Thompson, he must have invited me out because he was worried about me. Actually, I made a big show of quitting, but things haven't been going well. Well, I could sort of tell by looking at your face. So, what are you planning to do now? I don't know, honestly. I'm reaching my limit, both mentally and physically. I wanted to keep things light since I was meeting Thompson after a long time. But once I started talking about work, the floodgates of my anxieties and complaints opened. Thompson listened silently to my venting, without blaming or pointing anything out. And after I had finished talking, he made an offer. Isn't it because you're doing it alone that you feel insecure? If that's the case, I'll help you. Even if you want to help. You have your job, don't you? I can just quit it. What kind of joke is that? I looked up sharply, but the expression on Thompson's face was dead serious. He was serious about it. That realization made it hard for me to respond lightly. But ultimately, as I was nearing my limit, I ended up asking Thompson for help. While I was hesitating, Thompson acted as if he already knew he would come to help me. He had started handing over his tasks to his colleagues the day after we went out for drinks and had even submitted his resignation to Miller. While I was slightly shocked by his decisiveness, I knew I had to be grateful to Thompson. What would you have done if I had said I was quitting the company? That would also be fine then, but I believed in you. Believed in what? That you were the kind of person who wouldn't run away and would keep fighting. Maybe I had misunderstood Thompson. Thompson was skinny, not much muscle, and didn't seem like someone who would be in a mountaineering club. Also, even after becoming an adult, he wasn't proactive in speaking up, and I had never seen him get serious. But for some reason, it was different when it came to me. Whenever I was in trouble, he would always come to my aid and extend his hand. Moreover, he seemed not to worry about what would ultimately happen to himself. And thinking back to our college days, the Thompson of today is hardly recognizable. I was so curious that I had to ask Thompson, why are you going to such lengths for me? Even if you say you helped me back in college, that day wasn't all that dangerous, and saying you saved my life is an exaggeration. I've been helped by you even after becoming a working adult. Was there such a time? I thought back over everything from when I joined the company to now. Could it be that time? There were a few incidents that came to mind. When I was just getting used to work, a major problem occurred in the office. Data on the computer was completely lost, and there was no backup. In the worst situation, I was the one who raised my hand. I had been studying programming and IT as a hobby and thought I might be able to restore it. Other employees offered to help, but since I would have had to teach everything from scratch, I asked everyone to go home, and I stayed at the company alone to work. It was an urgent job, so I stayed up all night working on the recovery. I think it took about 2 days to restore everything. Come to think of it, Thompson might have been among those employees who offered to help. When I talked about the major trouble, Thompson nodded. Yes, I was really worried at that time. But Anderson stepped up first and worked so desperately on it, and that's what saved us. To me, helping someone in trouble was natural, but that must have meant a lot to Thompson. That's why he's helping me like this. I wasn't looking for a thank you, but what I did came back to me in a full circle. From there, Thompson and I started from scratch and somehow shaped the business. During that time, neither of us had work, so we started running out of money and ended up working night shifts at a convenience store to make ends meet. It had been since college since I last worked a part-time job, but it turned out to be surprisingly interesting. We worked the night shift at a convenience store in a business district, which allowed us to observe all kinds of people, including some company presidents. There were quite a few hours when it was slow, and we got to befriend various people. Some were working late, while others had just started their own businesses. Interacting with so many people made me realize I wasn't trying hard enough. Having Thompson come to help might have made me a bit complacent. Through the night shift at the convenience store, I learned a lot. Maybe it's time to really get things rolling. Yeah, maybe we can make it work now. After about 6 months of working the convenience store job, we decided to start moving our company forward in earnest. Thanks to the network we built during our part-time job, we slowly started to get work. By the time 2 years had passed since starting our business, we were consistently in the black. We were even able to hire a few employees, making our startup a success. Since then, a lot has happened, including being invited to Miller's wedding. Miller apologized for the misunderstanding on the snowy mountain, and now it's just a funny story. After working non-stop for so long, we finally decided to take a break, and the place we headed to was the Odin restaurant we had visited before. This Odin really is delicious. Right. I knew you'd like it, Anderson. Thompson, you seem to know everything about me, huh? Of course, we're friends, aren't we? Thompson, perhaps embarrassed by his own words, looked away out the window. I followed his gaze, and there was a big full moon visible. It's said that we can see the far side of the moon from Earth, but I wonder what it's like. Chasing after something you'll never know might be fun, but I want to pursue things where I can see the results. And as a result, I've found companions who have stuck with me. Maybe it's all right for people to show only one side of themselves, just like the moon. But if you can know everything about the other person, you can build a deeper relationship. In fact, I have shown my worst side to Thompson, and as a result, we have fought many times. Conversely, I know Thompson's flaws, and there are times when they irritate me. By accepting the unpleasant parts of each other, perhaps a true relationship can be built. In today's society, finding someone like Thompson is difficult, because everyone wants to show only their good side, and some people don't show their true selves. Also, like Miller after we returned from the snowy mountain, there are those who won't listen. Even if you have your reasons, even if you did nothing wrong, everything can end with a misunderstanding. No matter how much you want to connect with someone, there's no guarantee they will reciprocate. I think this applies to work, love, and various other relationships. While thinking about these things, I sipped on Japanese sake, gazing at the full moon. Usually, we chat noisily, but that day, both Thompson and I quietly enjoyed our drinks. Since then, we have struggled to grow our company. The employees Thompson found are all excellent, and several years have passed without any major troubles. Thinking the employees could manage the company for a while, we decided to head overseas. It's fine to expand a business in Japan, but we thought there might be bigger opportunities abroad. Overseas, there are different values, and the demand and supply vary. So, after arriving abroad, we focused on building connections at first. The people we met were all friendly and taught us various things. Additionally, many people start businesses while still students abroad, and we were able to hear stories about company management. Though we didn't find new business partner 140s abroad, we came up with ideas for expanding overseas. As soon as Thompson and I returned to Japan, we discussed how to develop our business abroad. There's still much to do, but the only way is forward. Even if difficulties arise, I feel like we can overcome them as long as Thompson is with me. I thought this while looking at Thompson's profile as he talked about business plans.